Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to my Kiss CD collection run through. One of my absolute favorite bands. Been a fan of them for a very long time and they've got such a cool history. Having formed in 1973, releasing 20 studio albums. Unfortunately, they hung it up in 2023, 50 years on from when they formed, but we got a lot of great stuff and I've got 55 CDs in my collection to run through with you guys. So we're going to get into it here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on cool things like this with me running through my Kiss CD collection. So we're going to run through this sort of chronologically. And I say that is that we're going to run through it chronologically from when the music was recorded as best as I can get it into here. But, with so many things that got released, some things come out later, but they were actually recorded much earlier. So we're going to try to go chronologically by the time that the music was made. And one thing that is missing from my collection that I would one day like to get in here is a really good, high quality bootleg of the Wicked Lester sessions. Gene and Paul, their first band, recorded an album, chose not to release it, quit that group, Wicked Lester, and formed Kiss famously in 1973. And of course, as they say, the rest is history. So I've seen plenty of boots out there, but they're usually pretty poor quality, so I've just never added one to my collection, but one day I hope to. So we're going to kick off in 1974 with their debut album. This is one of the remastered albums. In fact, I've replaced all of my original run with the remastered ones wherever they've released. And of course, they've only released the remasterings up through, I think it was Crazy Crazy Nights. They did not do it for Hot in the Shade. We'll get into that more when we get to it. But we kick off with the debut album, an absolute classic album. I don't think most people knew what to expect when they first saw and heard that. Next up, Hotter Than Hell. Both the debut and this album coming out in the same year. This was back when bands would do that. Get two albums from your favorite band in 1 year. I mean, that's absolutely unheard of today, but they were doing that. So again, the remastered version of that, and then Dressed to Kill in 1975, featuring Rock and Roll All Night, although it wouldn't break until the next release being the Alive albums, which I'll get to in a minute. But before we do, I've also got a bootleg of studio demos that were recorded in 75 and 76 that I wanted to show to you guys. Very high quality one. And so some of these demos are later going to turn up on the Destroyer box set that would be released. But this has some other stuff from earlier on than that. And one of my favorite things in the collection, if I can always get more material from my favorite bands, I will do that. So the Alive albums, I don't have them individually. Once upon a time, I did have Alive and Alive 2 as the remaster ones. One day I'd like to get those back in the collection just for complete reasons. But this has them in there. And so this Alive box set, which has Kiss Alive 75, then Kiss Alive 2 in 77, Kiss Alive 3 in 1993. But the reason I bought this more than anything was that it had the Millennium Concert from 2000. It was the only way to get it. And it was intended to be Kiss Alive 4, and then the band shelved it for whatever reason. And later on, Kiss Alive 4 becomes the band with the symphony. And again, I'll show you that at that time. But this box set fills my Kiss Alive quota. So next we've got the remastered edition of Destroyer, which came out in 76. I've never opened this one because I have so many versions of this. I've just decided to leave it at this point. But you can see that, CD Warehouse, if you guys remember that, it was $9.99 at the time when it came out. like the little news stickers that they would put on that. So I've got that, but as I said, I've got multiple versions of this. So I've got their reconstructed version. So this was the original album art. But it became that they just didn't think that the burning buildings and stuff behind them was good. So they changed it to look like this in the end. But later on, this came out, and on the song Sweet Pain, there's a different guitar solo that they had wanted to use and I guess didn't for whatever reason. So there's a little bit difference about this in terms of the mix and the artwork and stuff, but it's the original version of what they wanted to do. So I've got that. And then the band puts out its 45 anniversary deluxe or super deluxe edition of it. And this is where I was saying that some of those bonus tracks on here are the demos that were from that bootleg that I showed you guys. And that was the reason I bought this box, because on disc 3, or actually it's disc 2, the Destroyer Era demos, we've got it broken into the Paul Stanley demos and the Gene Simmons demos. And there's so much great stuff on here. Don't You Hesitate, It's the Fire, Love Is All Right, Gene Simmons, Bad Bad Lovin', Man of a Thousand Faces, which would turn up on a solo album, but there's a demo version here. Rock and Roll's Royce. I mean, so many great songs that didn't make albums or would turn up later, but included here. And then disc 3 has a whole bunch of alternate versions and mixes and stuff. There's a live disc in here, all making this really worthwhile. This was a very expensive box set, I know, and a lot of you chose not to pick it up because of that. I totally get it, but I'm a huge Kiss fan. I needed those other recordings, and that was the only way to get it. So I did it. As being the big Kiss fan I am, I also decided to pick up the 2-disc version of the deluxe album, where they basically did a selections of from the box set as the second disc. And I like that because it's sort of like a best of the box. And I can throw that on and listen to that as one disc thing instead of diving in individually the way that the box set is set up. So I end up really enjoying those at the time when they're released. And of course, being a completist, I get to have it in the collection. So, you know, now that I have this original version here remastered, I don't need this remastered. And yeah, there you go. So we move on with Rock and Roll Over. One of my favorite albums that the band did. Again, it's a remastered copy of it. And then we move into Love Gun. And this here is probably my favorite of the original era of the band. I absolutely love this one here. So many great tracks, opening with I Stole Your Love. Track 3, Got Love for Sale. 4, Shock Me, the Ace Frehley tune. Of course, the title track, Love Gun. I love Hooligan on here, which is a Peter Criss song. But yeah, lots and lots of great ones. It's just a fantastic cover. I believe it's the same artist that did this one for Destroyer, did Love Gun, which would stand to reason. And they put out a 2-disc deluxe edition. We didn't get a box set for it, which is a little disappointing. We just got this. But again, we get that bonus disc in here of some cool demos like Much Too Soon, Plastercaster, Reputation is on here. But other cool stuff. And let's see if it's there it is. Okay, what was also very cool about this, and would be something normally you would get like in the box set, the Love Gun magnet that was in the original vinyl versions of this is included in this CD. When mine came, the first one that I got was torn, and I had to send it back and get a different one. What a bummer that was when I opened it at that time. All right, so now we're going to move into seeing some of the Soundboard recordings, and I've got one from 1977. It's a single disc one. I've not opened it yet. Most of you guys know I'm not a big live album fan, but I do want these things in my collection. And then at various times, I will do a deep dive into the band, and at that point, I want all that stuff, and I'll start ripping these things open and listening to it and devouring it and all that sort of stuff. But because stuff goes out of print, I just pick it up right away. So part of their live bootleg series, This one's got 17 tracks on it. And I like these because these are unfiltered. They're not like the Alive albums where we know that the band went back in the studio and fixed things. They added additional audience recording to it. And so they're not really live albums, those Alive records, at least the first two. Now, at this point here, the band decided to go make separate solo albums. This was all in an effort to keep Peter Criss and Ace Frehley happy, but everybody got to go off and do it. I think it was an amazing marketing thing, and what a cool thing at the height of their career for fans to get 4 albums on the same day, one from each member. Even if those albums didn't sound all like Kiss material, they're some of my favorite albums in the whole catalog. We're kicking off with the Gene Simmons album, which kind of runs the gauntlet. It's got stuff that very much sounds like Kiss, and then it's got songs, it ends with like When You Wish Upon a Star, the Disney song, kind of crazy, but Radioactive, Burning Up with Fever, Man of a Thousand Faces, as I said, that's on here. He finally records a version for this. The Paul Stanley one is one that I would have thought, in fact, I think this is the very first one I bought, but I never really thought this one was that great of an album. Yet he's really kind of the most prominent voice from the band, so you would have expected that. One of my absolute favorites, though, it's the Peter Criss album. And no, it doesn't really sound like Kiss material, but I love his voice so much, and it really infuses the soul sounds that he loves a lot that kind of would sometimes come through his music, and we get a whole album's worth of it. I love this album, pull it out all the time. The one that sold the most and most people liked the best was actually the Ace Frehley album, and this does sound the most Kiss-like. And the fact that when he would present a song to the band, like Shock Me, that was a definitive Ace Frehley song, and he wrote, 9 songs that are essentially that. So if you liked the Ace Frehley songs, you got that on this, making this one a really popular album. And I don't know if this only came out like in other countries, Japan or whatnot, but I've got a Japanese reissue CD that was the best of the solo albums, and it pulled 3 or 4 tracks from each of the releases and made a greatest hits out of it, which I think is awesome. And so I don't know if that got a full wide release everywhere, but when I saw that it was getting reissued like this in Japan, I had to grab it. But it did come out back in the day. I think at a certain point, the albums weren't selling, and they decided to make a best of, I guess, to see if they could get that to sell more. I don't think it did any better. I decided to pop this in here at the solo album period, although this comes out much later. Hard to read the date on the back, around mid to late 2000s. Kiss Icons, because it breaks down. There is an album of Gene Simmons, an album of Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. It includes stuff from the solo albums, but it also pulls their individually sung tracks off the albums. And so it's a 4 CD box set, essentially, although I think they could have done it better, like in a clamshell box, making it more than it is. And you basically, whatever is your favorite member of the band, you can listen to a whole album of just them singing. I thought this was long overdue when it finally came out. That was something I can't believe didn't happen sooner. And really, I think they should have been released individually. Probably should have done it in the mid-90s when the band had reformed. Probably would have sold a lot more if they had done it at that time. All right, but we jump back over to, let's just check the dates on here. Yeah, we jump back over to 1978 and the band releasing Double Platinum. And this is something that a lot of people remember getting into the band at the time. This kind of, amazing opening this up and seeing all of that. And that was just, I guess, a big deal to a lot of people, because you hear various musicians, Scott Ian of Anthrax and Dimebag Darrell of Pantera, and people talk about that album and how it changed them the way that album like Alive and Alive 2 did. Now, one of my absolute favorite Kiss album, although I will agree this is not their standard sounding stuff, Dynasty in '79 is basically their disco-infused rock album. And we, of course, have the big hit, I Was Made for Loving You. But I like everything else on here. 2000 Man from Ace Frehley, Sure Know Something, Dirty Livin', Hard Times, all so very good. That's one of my absolute favorite albums, period. And continuing that sound on, we get Unmasked, although I don't think this is quite as good as Dynasty, but this one, very, very good. Lots of Ace Frehley tunes on this one. Torpedo Girl, Two Sides of the Coin, Talk to Me, I think it is. Great stuff. I was surprised. So many good Ace Frehley songs on that album alone. And the band takes this weird twist on The Elder and makes their rock opera, and it just does not go over well. And I don't think it aged very well. It's very much of the time kind of thing. I understand there is a different running order of tracks on the original one that is not this, the remastered, and I'm on the hunt to find one of those and put that in my collection. I've never had the album before the remasters happened. I fleshed out my catalog at that point. So if I had known there was a different track listing, I'd have picked that up a long time ago. But that's actually something I only just recently found out, maybe like in the last year or two, I think. The band puts out this album, Killers, a Japanese-only album, and it's got 4 new songs that are on it, which is kind of crazy. And actually, when I say Japanese-only CD, the album Killers may have been on vinyl at the time, wide, I don't know. But the CD version of it is Japanese only. Don't know why this has never gotten reissued, simply for having those 4 tracks on it. I'm a Legend Tonight, Down on Your Knees, I think both of those, Nowhere to Run, Partners in Crime. I believe those are the 4 on here. But it's a great collection, but to have those 4 additional studio recordings, tracks, unreleased tracks, totally makes that worthwhile in my opinion. All right, we move on to one of the best hard rock albums of their career, Creatures of the Night. This is 1982. No, Ace does not play on this album, but of course his picture was here. A little deceiving in that, the band trying to keep things together, so totally understand that. The band would then put out the 40th Anniversary Deluxe Edition box set version, and much like the Destroyer box set that I showed you guys, there's demos, rarities, and outtakes, 2 discs worth of that in here. Not quite as much as the previous Destroyer box, but those 4 songs from the Killers compilation that I just showed are on the box set. So I Need a Legend, Tonight, Down on Your Knees, Nowhere to Run, Partners in Crime. I was right, those are the 4. And then we get things like Deadly Weapons on here, Feels Like Heaven. These are the Penny Lane demos. We get some instrumentals, bunches of cool stuff like that in different takes, all on here. There's also a live album on here from the 82-83 tour, Creatures of the Night. 2 discs of that, but a fantastic box set again, costing a lot of money, but I needed those unreleased recordings. And like I did with Destroyer, I bought the 2-disc edition of it because disc 2 has that selections of on it, making some cool stuff. But kind of cool that the band doesn't gather up all of those unreleased songs and just put it on that 2nd disc, so that it makes it worthwhile to get it. You get a couple of them, but you don't get it all. If you want it all, you got to buy the box for it. And I sort of appreciate it being the collector in that I'm buying it all, and I don't want it to just be given away on the 2-disc edition. Sometimes that happens with box sets. I see that, case in point real quick, Pink Floyd, the Wish You Were Here album, the bonus disc that is in the Immersion box set that has all the unreleased stuff on it is the 2nd disc in the 2-disc edition. And there's nothing else in there that, in my opinion, worth picking up. So I got everything just on that disc. I really wanted the box set in my collection, but no reason to have something that didn't have more audio for me. All right, back over to Kiss, because that's really what we're here for, right? I understand. Lick It Up in '83. My favorite of the Unmasked albums. This one here, so good. Just rocks all the way through in here. Not for the Innocent, Young and Wasted, All Hell's Breaking Loose. Of course, an Exciter that opens this, but Lick It Up, the title track. Just really good stuff. I've long heard rumors that they were going to put a box set out for Lick It Up. I don't know when that's going to happen. We've recently heard from Eddie Kramer, the producer for the Alive albums, that he recently worked to remix them all. So that is all done with a bunch of extra stuff. And a lot of people thought it would come out this year, 2025 for the 1975 original release 50th anniversary. So far, not announced. Don't think they're going to announce it at this late stage. Maybe they will, but yeah, really surprised we haven't heard more about it, being that it is the 50th anniversary of their biggest album, which was Kiss Alive. All right, moving on to Animalize. Again, staying on with those remastered editions, so just fleshing out the catalog. Another one of the ones that I really like from the Unmasked era was this one here. We've got, Asylum, drew a blank all of a sudden on it, but just a really good album. Definitely the glam metal phase of the band. It's interesting how a number of 70s rock bands would make glam metal albums like Whitesnake and Aerosmith, but they were really 70s, hard rock or blues-based rock groups or things like that. Kiss fell into it very easily because they kind of were part of the glam rock scene and able to bring that sort of stuff in, which is what glam metal was also built upon. Crazy Nights, this album here, last of the remaster series. This one here, kind of very over the top. I never really cared for the production of it. Absolutely love the song Crazy Nights that are on here. And there's a few others, but lyrically, it's also just kind of very cheesy, very much of the 80s. And I say that with full-on love. I love glam metal and the 80s sound, but this album did it like really, really deep. Turn on the Night, one of my favorite songs on here, and Reason to Live. So there's a lot of good stuff on this album, but they were also using outside songwriters and starting to not sound like Kiss with this release. So they were sounding like all the other glam metal artists, but not really sounding like themselves. That might be a reason that it never quite worked for me as well. The band puts out smashes, thrashes, and hits. Cool compilation album, and this is the way compilation albums should be done. It has 2 new songs on it. Let's put the X and Sex, You Make Me Rock Hard, but then it's got some single versions and different ones, and the song Beth on here actually has Eric Carr singing lead on it. They recorded a new studio version of that. The song Detroit Rock City is an edited version, which cuts out all that race car stuff up front on it and just has the music start. So it's edited down to 2 minutes and 44 seconds. But I like that about this, and the running order of it sounds great. It's basically like a live show. It ends with Rock and Roll All Night and then Shout It Out Loud. So it's just a very cool collection, one of the best ones in their whole career, because they would stop putting a lot of those 80s songs and 70s songs, mixing them together. It's very hard to get a collection like that these days. They pretty much focus on the 70s era of the band, and don't really cover a lot of the other stuff, which is unfortunate. All right, so I don't know why, because it was still on the Mercury Records label, but Hot in the Shade never got a remaster. I kind of understood the later albums that came after this, maybe not, because I believe these happened in 1998. This is 1989, I think. Yeah. So 10 years on, this could have easily gotten one, but they didn't do it for whatever reason. Fantastic album. It runs on a little bit too long, I think. But songs like Rise to It, Hide Your Heart, what was the big ballad Forever that was on this one? Absolutely amazing tracks. Don't know why that album doesn't get more love like it should. The band made a good comeback doing a great hard rock style Kiss sounding album with Revenge. Didn't really turn around the sales for them. It still went gold, but it didn't like explode into 1 million or 2 million in sales. I later got to meet Bruce Kulick and got him to sign it when he was part of the band Union with John Corabi, former Motley Crue and Scream singer. I got to meet those guys, and I got him to sign my Kiss related or his Kiss era albums. So this is when I fell in love with the band. I mean, I knew the band before this. This is 1992. This is my era of Kiss. They come out with the song Unholy, and it blows my mind. It's so heavy, and I love the sound of Gene Simmons singing on it, and I became a huge Kiss fanatic with this album. They followed up in 93 with Kiss Alive 3. You can see I got Bruce to sign it. So, of course, I'm never going to get rid of that. And I just love this album. I listen to this through and through. I mean, these two albums together, man, I was playing them all the time. And basically, I was buying my other Kiss albums one at a time as I found them. If I went to a store somewhere that sold music and they had one of them, and a lot of these were in the like $7.99, $8.99 bin at the time, that nice price, or not really reduced. They weren't like cutouts. It was just that these were cheaper CDs than the other ones, and I would go through those. Sometimes I could get my mom to buy me one. And if I found a Kiss one and she knew I was huge into Kiss at the time, she would usually buy it for me. And so I built up my collection that way, getting all the solo albums. I remember getting Unmasked that way. Yeah, such good memories picking all those up. Kiss Unplugged, man, the band, it is 1996, I believe. They record this, and it's the four current guys with Eric Singer and Bruce Kulick in there. But at the end of it, they bring out the original guys, Peter Criss and Ace Frehley, for 4 songs. Oh my God, everybody was losing their minds over this stuff. It was so cool. I loved it as the 6-person lineup. And while I totally get the 4 guys going out, putting on the makeup and doing all that, I really felt like all 6 guys should have gone out on the road. And it just should have been a big band like that. Or maybe for the final tour. I mean, Halloween has gone out and done that. Some other bands have done that, done the sort of mega lineup, bringing multiple members back in. Iron Maiden, bringing Adrian Smith back and keeping Janet Gears in there. So to capitalize on the fact that the 4 guys were getting back together and going out on tour, they did You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best, one of the longest titles. And this had 4 unreleased songs recorded at its time for Alive, and 4 unreleased live songs that were recorded for Alive 2, and 4 other songs, or sorry, take that back. 4 songs from Alive, 4 songs from Alive 2, and 4 songs that didn't make the album. I think that's how this works. And then there was a Kiss Tells All, an interview, and I think it's with Jay Leno at the end of this. And at that time, the band was bigger than anything around, and people were gobbling it up. I mean, they did a midnight release for this thing. It's basically a compilation. I remember going out for this and couldn't wait to get a hold of it. You can see it's in a special red and yellow CD case like that. But this was a cool thing to get. They put out Kiss Greatest. This one here, one of the better single disc collections, still not quite as good, I think, as Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, but this does have the original recordings of that 70s era stuff, and it does throw in, it's got a new version of Shout It Out Loud, which was the video version, so it sounds like it's a live version, but it was the studio just with a live track thrown in on it. And I'm trying to see, because this is, the cool thing about this is it's not in chronological order. We kick off with Detroit Rock City, Hard Lovin' Woman, and then Sure Know Something is on here, which I would not have expected. Just lots and lots of good stuff on here. I was trying to see, I thought they had Forever on this one. I'm just not finding it quick enough. No, I think all of this, that's what this is. All of this is the original 70s era of the group. What I'm thinking of is another compilation. So this was to promote the reunion of the guys, but you were essentially getting that one new version of Shout It Out Loud, which was a video at the time. And then we get a concert live at Donington. This is another one of those official bootleg series ones that they've released. August 17, 1996, Monsters of Rock. It is a 2-disc edition, and it's from that reunion show of the band. Then we get, this was actually recorded and finished earlier. It was actually finished before the Unplugged show, but didn't get released till 1997. Carnival of Souls, The Final Sessions. And this is essentially their grunge era album. I think if they had put it out in 94, 95, somewhere in that era, it might have done all right for the band. It was heavy. And it was just the band changing with the times again, make it like they made a disco rock album, like they made other, sounding albums, glam metal, glam rock, whatever you want to call it. They were doing it and they did a great job doing that stuff, always making those changes. But by 1997, it also did well probably too because people were gobbling up anything Kiss. They did release the song Jungle, and I heard that all over the radio everywhere. Even though it wasn't the sound of the original guys and didn't include Peter, Chris, and Ace Frehley, radio was playing it, man. So maybe it did better that way. I don't know. It's kind of almost an equal. I think the album went gold eventually, and might not have done that at the time. So the band would finally record Psycho Circus 1998, and it had this cool lenticular cover like that on it, which was very unique at the time. All four original members. The issue is that they didn't all get together and write. It's really only an album in name. They wrote a song, had Peter Criss sing it. Ace brought in one song, Into the Void. I think that's the only thing. They do all co-sing on one of the songs on here. I want to say, I don't know if it's You Wanted the Best, I Got the Best, or Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock. One of those. Maybe it's both of those. But it's good stuff, but it really wasn't, I think, what a lot of people were expecting. The song Psycho Circus is a great song, but it doesn't sound like the original era Kiss. It sounded like what Kiss would have made in the early 90s. So it, I don't think it did as well as it could have done. If they had actually all gotten together and written and sounded like the mid 70s, probably would have done a lot better. Still a great album. Okay, then I've got Off the Soundboard, March 13th, 2001 show. This one was a unique one. I think this one has, because Ace Frehley still in the group, Peter Criss not, with Eric Singer. So the lineup is a rare lineup kind of thing, and I wanted to get it and have it for that. The track listing is kind of cool too. I think that was probably the first one they released because that's why I opened that one to enjoy it. And the other ones I bought just, as I said, I haven't opened them yet, but I will. So Alive 4 finally does come out, and it's 2003. At the store that I bought this from, which was a Tower Records, if you bought it, you could get all four autographed members. They were just giving these away. Didn't cost you anything extra. And I forget how it was. I'm pretty sure that I'd already bought this and had it, and I didn't have that. And I saw this behind the counter. I didn't want to buy the whole thing again. What I didn't own was the single disc edition of it. And if you had bought this, they just gave you the other booklet. They didn't, trade it out or something. So they just had these booklets sitting there. And I asked about that. And they said, oh, if you buy the album, you get this kind of thing. And I said, I asked to speak to a manager. I said, look, I already own the 2 CD edition of it. If I buy this single disc edition, which I don't own, so I would, like to have that, could I get one of those? And they said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I bought this one, which is kind of cool because it's a selection from the 2 disc. It's a greatest hits, so to speak. And I did actually end up enjoying this far more than this one in the end. So it was really interesting. But I got the booklet with all the signatures. So I got to have that. Actually, now that I look at it, I know I didn't buy it. I got this. It's a promo copy. There's a used record store I used to go to that would get promo CDs, and they would get them in weeks and sometimes months before the albums would come out. And I would get to buy them from them, and they were just regular used CD price type things. But anyway, I did buy this one here, and the one cool thing about this that also made it worthwhile was the bonus track on here. Do you remember Rock and Roll Radio, the Ramones cover? There was a Ramones tribute album, and they were part of it, and this was the only way it was appearing on a Kiss album. So again, found a reason to have that in the collection. Here's that Kiss compilation that I was confusing Kiss Greatest with. It's the very best of Kiss. This one here is probably as good as you're going to get present day for having both 70s and 80s era stuff of the band on it. And we kick off with Strutter and Deuce and Got to Choose and all that kind of stuff on here. We get songs on here, like we get New York Groove off of Ace Frehley's solo album. We also get I Love It Loud, Lick It Up Forever, and God Gave Rock and Roll to You from the newer era of the band. Still doesn't have a lot of the stuff on here that I would have wanted on here, but it is a great collection going all the way up through 1992 with God Gave Rock and Roll to You. And all of these on here are bona fide hits, so it does make it understandable, and it's probably the best single disc collection out there. This is something I picked up later on. Didn't buy these at the time, but I ended up liking these for the fact that there are 3 of these Millennium collections for Kiss in the series, and each one is actually a really great selection, and it's just of an era, and the covers are different. So we cover the original 70s era of the group, and let's actually check this. Volume 3. Sorry, that's volume 3. I've got this backwards. They were back together at that point. So there you go. You can understand why I mixed up. That's number 1. So this is the 70s era of stuff, 12 tracks on here, and it goes up through 78 or 79 with I Was Made for Loving You on here from Strutter all the way up to that. And then this is the real one. I think I bought this one first and decided to go back and buy the others, but the 80s era, so just the 80s stuff, Creatures of the Night, all the way up through Hot in the Shade, Forever. And they didn't put the 90s, but they were really doing like 1980 to 89 kind of stuff, or 73 to 79. And then they did the 90s era stuff, and it's this one. And so the band had reformed, so that was a later picture of the band at that time. So this kicks off with this stuff like God Gave Rock and Roll to You, Unholy. It's got Domino Live on it version. It's got the some unplugged stuff on here, and it's got stuff from Psycho Circus. So really only it's missing the last 2 albums of the band, and otherwise the 3-disc collection would have been, an essential thing. The band finally does make a new album, and this is what Kiss should have sounded like, although Ace Frehley, Peter Criss are out by this time. Sonic Boom. I believe this is the same artist that did Rock and Roll Over. They got to do this, which is why it's kind of stylized the way that it is. And this was a cool package because they at this time, bands like this were trying to sell and push albums, and if they made something unique about it, they figured it could sell. So this was a 3-disc thing. Journey did this first with their album, I think it's called Revelations, and they did a 3-disc thing in there where they like put a live album and re-recorded hits, or something like that, and it sold tremendously. So Kiss comes along to do the same thing. You get the album of the new material, then you get Kiss Classics, which was actually re-recorded songs with the current lineup, and then we get a Kiss Live in Buenos Aires DVD included. So you got a greatest hits, you got a brand new studio album, and you got live. I mean, it was so cool to get this at that time and have so much Kiss to devour. The Kiss started doing a trend that was at the time where it was you could buy the live shows at the show, and then they would be mailed to you and they would master. And so I bought this one, Kiss 35, and I think it's made up of a series of shows where they were actually doing the individual ones, but this was a best of. So this covers their 1999 tour, and you can kind of see it on here. They actually list all of the shows that make this up, and they are burned discs, but it is official release. And so I picked up this one, Kiss Alive 35. Technically, it's an Alive album. They don't count it in that, but it is. Now, when I was talking about Sonic Boom and having the Kiss Classics, the re-recorded classics, that's actually because of this disc here, a Japanese release. They re-recorded it and put it out in Japan first, and then later on, it was included here in this. But the story is, at least that I understand it, that they re-recorded the songs so that those new versions could be used in movies and television and TV, and they would make more of the money that way. Don't know if that's true, but that's at least what I read at the time as to why they got re-recorded and why they weren't being released as its own standalone disc or only in Japan or whatever was the reason for the re-recording was for the other purposes, and they just tacked it on to do bonus stuff. All right, the final 20th album from the band, Monster, came out in 2012, and unfortunately, 13 years later, the band hangs it up without having made a new album in a 13-year span, which was an absolute bummer. But it was a great album. It's a good last album to go out. Of the two that they made, I think this is the superior one. We did luckily get two very good albums at the end from the band. So, you know, it is what it is. Some other stuff has come out since the band has, stopped making new albums. Kiss Rocks Vegas. This was a box set version, and I did want, there was something extra, I forget what it was that was on the box set version. I just couldn't justify the cost of it, so I bought this. So you get the DVD, and then you get, there's Kiss Acoustic, I think that's what it was, is maybe on the DVD if I'm not mistaken, and then you get a CD of the live show, and I wanted the CD of the acoustic, and that was only in the box set, but it was on the DVD. And then this is a really cool 2 CD collection, Decades of Decibels, Kiss 40 Anniversary. This has a lot of cool rare type stuff on it, different versions of live, and song Reputation on here was an outtake. That was good. I can't really read all this stuff because it's gray on gray. But this was a cool collection. This was a fan-oriented collection, in my opinion, and they did this really well. And I'm now realizing I forgot to show you guys this Kiss guitar-shaped box set that they did. I want to say this was like around 98, 99. Actually, it was, right around maybe 98, 99, because it includes stuff from the Psycho Circus era. But we open this up here, and you can see the CDs are inside this thing, and there's this great, letter to the fans. There's the book and the other CDs, but it's just like a guitar case in this thing. And so, great box set. Had to splurge and get this. I want to say it was only $150 at the time. That was a lot of money at the time. Today, this thing would probably be $350 to $500 or something ridiculous like that. But there you go. That is my Kiss collection of 55 CDs. And when I count 55, I didn't count the 5 that are in this or those box sets. I just counted those as one. So really, there's a lot more CDs in here, but those 55, and hopefully maybe you found something in here you didn't know was available or reminded you was floating around out there and you want to get a copy of it. But I hope that's what these kind of CD collection run-through videos do for you guys. This one being on Kiss, one of my absolute favorite bands. Hope it's one of yours as well. Let me know what is your favorite Kiss item in your collection. And otherwise, have a great day. Bye-bye, everyone.